Hello, welcome back to my channel, and it's a welcome back for me too, because you have probably noticed if you've been here for a while that it's been a couple of weeks since I posted a video, and typically I usually post weekly. As we all know, the world is crazy right now, and to be honest, it just didn't really feel right jumping on here being, super smiley and chatting about Formula One when there's so much, so many bigger things happening. But with that being said, the season is very fast approaching. We are now just less than 2 weeks at this point, out from the first race weekend in Bahrain, and it felt like it was the right time to come back on, and I am actually quite excited about the topic that I'm going to chat to you about in today's video. You're probably wondering what brought me back. What was I so interested in talking about that I just had to jump on here? And if you've clicked on this video, that probably means you saw the title and you're like, I have been wondering what's going on with this Andretti Global situation that's been in the news for the last couple of weeks in Formula One. And luckily for you, I have gone and done the digging, so let's get into it. So first of all, who is Michael Andretti? You're probably hearing his surname and thinking, that sounds familiar. And the reason for that is that he is the son of Mario Andretti, who won the Formula One World Drivers' Championship back in 1978. With that being said, he is, sort of a somewhat polarized figure in Formula One. He had obviously the success of winning a world championship, but that was sort of the pinnacle of a very up and down career in the sport for him. And it's kind of completely different to how he's perceived in the US, where the Andretti name is absolutely a household legendary name in US motorsports, and Mario Andretti is actually one of only 2 drivers to have won races across Formula One, IndyCar, the World Sports Car Championship, and NASCAR. That was a bit of a mouthful. So Mario's son Michael was quick to follow in his dad's footsteps, and he also became very, very successful in the US motorsports arena. He's broadly thought of as being one of the most successful American open wheel car racers in their history. However, he did not have a great career in Formula One. He joined the McLaren team actually in 1993, which was kind of a surprise and a pretty big achievement in itself. But he actually only managed to start 13 races, and he ended up leaving the team with 3 races remaining before the end of the season. And essentially it wasn't a good fit for him. He was pretty largely criticised for a lack of performance. It just didn't translate from the US over to Formula One as a discipline, and also he tended to have a lot of DNFs due to having on-track incidents with other drivers, which, as we know, even today, does not bode well for your career. So given the Andretti family's somewhat tumultuous past with Formula One, you might be wondering why on earth would they want a Formula One team, not to mention the fact that they're already running teams across 7 other motorsport disciplines, including IndyCar and Extreme E. So it's not as if Formula One is the only horse they're betting on here. There's a lot of things going on with the Andretti sort of family name and brand that goes along with it. Then again, we have seen in the past that the combination of lots of cash and the desire to prove people wrong can be a huge motivator, and I personally definitely think that there's a lot of that at play here. And this isn't even the first time that Andretti Global has almost been an F1 team. So back in the summer of last year, Michael Andretti actually got pretty close to buying what used to be the Sauber F1 team, now known as Alfa Romeo Racing. According to Andretti himself, he was 48 hours away from closing the deal, and it fell through due to what he called control issues. Obviously, all of these things are very much private and confidential, and there wasn't really a very good explanation that ever came out about exactly why it didn't go through. But now in 2022, he's back again. He's decided to go it alone, given that, the opportunities to buy Formula One teams are very much few and far between. And the current proposal that he has on the table would see Andretti Global become a newly minted team at the start of the 2024 Formula One season. So my question is, what would this mean for Formula One? So there are a ton of questions around this, and we definitely don't have time to chat through all of them, but there are a couple of them that I definitely do want to address. The first of those being that Andretti Global would be very much an all-American type of team, especially given their history and involvement with things like IndyCar and NASCAR. And immediately you're thinking, this team is going to want to have American drivers if they're in Formula One. Now, the history book on successful American F1 drivers is very short, and there's really just a few notable names, including people like Phil Hill, Dan Gurney, and obviously Mario Andretti himself, given that he did win a world championship. I personally think it would require a lot more effort for a brand new Andretti Global team to have a fully American driver lineup, given that there are not currently any American drivers on the Formula One grid. If anything, when you're coming in as a brand new team that has very little in the way of data in terms of how you're going to perform, you probably want at least one experienced driver to steady the ship. So that's either someone who has been in Formula One and is out of a seat and wants to come back in, or someone who's in at the moment that is looking for a seat. Beyond that, depending on your sponsorship situation, your financial situation, you might be able to take a more risky bet with your second seat and who you're going to give that to, in which case maybe you do give it to an American rookie F1 driver. On the other hand, since Liberty Media came into the scene as the owners of F1 in 2017, the push to promote the sport in the US has been massive, and to be fair, pretty successful. There are now 2 US Grand Prix. We have Austin and we have Miami this year. The series of, Netflix's Drive to Survive is a massive hit in the US. So would an all-American team with an all-American driver lineup increase F1's stake in the US sports market further? That has got to be a pretty tantalizing prospect, especially for Liberty. And if it happens under a name that just coincidentally is extremely popular in the US in terms of Andretti, who knows? Like I said, ambition plus money in Formula One goes a long way. It is also worth noting that not everybody in Formula One is over the moon excited about the prospect of another team joining the grid, and I'm talking specifically about Toto Wolff here. So the Mercedes team principal came out recently in response to the news that Andretti Global was vying to become a team in 2024, and essentially his point was that it's not just about being able to pay the $200 million entry fee to the sport. It's not just about conquering the American market. He raised the point that any new team that comes into Formula One, regardless of where they're coming from location-wise, has to be bringing a significant value add with them. And in other words, he's saying, what is the point of beefing up the grid if it's with uncompetitive cars? And to be honest, I completely agree. We don't need more cars at the end of the field being uncompetitive, battling amongst each other, essentially somewhat wasting the time of talented drivers who are trying to get a foot in the door in Formula One but can't quite make it up there to a better team. Not everybody graduates from that, and the stories of the people that don't, it's just really sad, and it is a waste of a career. Andretti's response to those comments from Toto was very interesting, especially in the context of my previous point about whether or not they would try to go for an all-American driver lineup. So he totally rebutted what Toto Wolff was saying and, kind of contradicted him, saying, I'm not sure what would be bringing to the table. He said, and I quote, "I think we bring a lot, and I think we'll bring a lot more than what we'll be diluting. I believe we can bring more longevity to the Netflix series to have a real American team with an American driver." Let's not forget, folks, that we already have an American team in Formula One. Oh, Haas. this ties into the previous points that I've made somewhat as well, in terms of value add and people who are skeptical of Andretti Global's potential future in Formula One. Since Haas came into the sport in 2016, they've only had one solid season of results, and that was back in 2018 when they finished 5th in the Constructors' Championship. For comparison, over the last 2 seasons, they have only managed to score 3 points total in the Constructors' Championship. That's a dismal showing, let's be honest. And with the news in the last couple of days of Nikita Mazepin being dropped, and therefore them also dropping their essentially title sponsor, the team is in a more uncertain place than ever. And whether it's fair or not to compare Andretti to Haas, I think we can all agree that at least some of the skepticism around Andretti is certainly based on the lackluster blueprint that Haas is currently setting for American teams in Formula One. And I don't think they're going to be able to go about changing people's opinions on that in 2022, given everything that has already happened before the season has even started. Alright folks, that's everything I've got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to give it a thumbs up if you learned something new, and also make sure that you're subscribed so that you can automatically get notified of my brand new videos, which will be coming out again every week from now on. I'm really curious also to hear what your thoughts are on this Andretti Global situation. Do you think that they would just be another Haas, or do you think that the Andretti family essentially has more ability behind them and more clout potentially to achieve more in Formula One? Drop a comment down below and I'll be hanging out with you all once this video comes out.